Where are Elmer, Herman, Bert, Tom, and Charlie? The weak of will, the strong of arm, the clown, the boozer, the fighter. All are sleeping on the hill. One passed in a fever, one was burned in a mine, one was killed in a brawl, one died in jail. One fell from a bridge, toiling for children and wife. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where are Ella, Kate, Madge, Lizzie, and Edith? The tender hearts, the simple soul, the loud, the proud, the happy one. All are sleeping on the hill. One died in shame-filled childbirth, one of thwarted love, one at the hand of a brute in a brothel, one of a broken pride in the search for heart's desire. One after life in faraway London and Paris was brought to her little space by Ella and Kate and Madge. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where are Uncle Isaac and Aunt Emily, and old Townie Kincaid, and Savine Houghton, and Major Walker, who had talked with venerable men of the Revolution? All are sleeping on the hill. They brought them dead sons from the war, and daughters whom life had crushed, and their children fatherless, crying. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where is old Fiddler Jones, who played with life all his 90 years, braving the sleet with bared breast, drinking, rioting, thinking neither of wife nor kin, nor gold, nor love, nor heaven? Lo, he babbles of the fish fries of long ago, of the horse races of long ago at Clary's Grove, of what Abe Lincoln said one time at Springfield.
Have you seen walking through the village a man with downcast eyes and haggard face? That is my husband who, by secret cruelty never to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty, till at last, wrinkled and with yellow teeth, and with broken pride and shameful humility, I sank into the grave. But what think you gnaws at my husband's heart? The face of what I was? The face of what he made me? These are driving him to the place where I lie. In death, therefore, I am avenged.
She took my strength by minutes. She took my life by hours. She drained me like a fevered moon that saps the spinning word. Days went by like shadows. The minutes wheeled like stars. She took the pity from my heart and made it into my smiles. She was a hunk of sculpture clay. My secret thoughts were fingers, they flew behind her pensive brow and landed deep with pain. They set the lips, sagged the cheeks, dropped the eye with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It wasn't mine. It wasn't hers. She held it, but its struggles modeled a face she hated and a face I feared to see. I beat the windows, shook the bottles. I hid me in a corner And then she died and haunted me for life.
Henry got me with child, knowing I could not bring forth life without losing my own. In my youth, therefore, I entered the portals of dust. Traveler, it is believed, in the village where I lived, that Henry loved me with a husband's love. But I proclaim from the dust that he slew me to gratify his hatred.
Together in this grave lie Benjamin Pantier, attorney at law, and Nick, his dog, faithful companion, solace, and friend. Down the gray road, friends, children, men and women, passing one by one out of life, left me, till I was alone with Nig, for partner, bedfellow, comrade in drink. In the morning of life, I knew aspiration and song glory. Then she, who survives me, snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death, till I, once strong of will, lay broken, indifferent, living with Nig in a room back of a dingy office. Under my jawbone is nestled the bony nose of Nig. Our story is lost in silence. Go by, mad world.
Where's my boy? My boy, in what far part of the world? The boy I loved best in all of this school. I, the teacher, the old maid, virgin heart, who made them all my children. Did I know my boy all right? Thinking of him as a spirit aflame, active, ever aspiring? Oh boy, for whom I prayed and prayed in many a watchful hour at night. Do you remember the letter I wrote you about the beautiful love of Christ? And whether you ever took it or not, my boy, wherever you are, work for your soul's sake. That all the clay of you, that all of the dross of you may yield to the fire of you. To the fire is nothing but light. Nothing but light.
I am Minerva, the village poetess, hooted at, jeered at by the yahoos of the street for my heavy body, cockeye, and rolling walk. And all the more when Butch Weldy captured me after a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Myers, and I sank into death, growing numb from the feet up like one stepping deeper and deeper into a stream of ice. Will someone go to the village newspaper and gather into a book the verses I wrote? I thirsted so for love. I hungered so for life.
No other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for the people in this town than I. All the weak, the hurt, the improvident, all those who couldn't pay, flocked to me. I was good-hearted, easy Dr. Myers. I was happy. I was healthy. I was in comfortable fortune. Blessed with a congenial wife, my children raised, all wedded, doing well in the world. And then one night, Minerva, the poetess, came to me in her troubles, crying. I tried to help her. She died. And they indicted me. The newspapers disgrace me. My wife perished from a broken heart, and pneumonia finished me.
He protested all his life long that the newspapers lied about him villainously, that he was not at fault for Minerva's fall, but only tried to help her. Poor soul, so sunk in sin, he could not see that even trying to help her, as he called it, he had broken the law, human and divine. Passers-by, an ancient admonition to you. If your ways be ways of pleasantness, and all your pathways peace, love God and keep his commandments.
I would have been as great as George Eliot, but for an untoward fate. For look, a photograph of me made by Pennywit, chin resting on hand, deep-set eyes, gray too and far-searching. But there was the old problem. Should it be celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, wooed me, luring me with promise of leisure for my novel, and I married him. Giving birth to 8 children, and never having time to write. It was all over for me anyway, when I ran the needle into my hand while washing the baby's things and died of lockjaw. Oh, ironical death. Oh, hear me, ambitious souls. Sex is the curse of life.
I belonged to the church and to the party of prohibition, and the villagers thought I died of eating watermelon. Truth, I had cirrhosis of the liver. For every noon for 30 years, I slipped behind the prescription petition in Trainer's drugstore and poured myself a generous drink from the bottle marked Spiritus Fumente.
Well, don't you see, this was the way of it. We bought the farm with what he inherited, and his brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them. We never had any peace with our treasure. The murrain took the cattle, and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary. So we mortgaged the farm to keep going. And he grew silent and was worried all the time. And some of the neighbors refused to speak to us and sided with his brothers and sisters. And I had no place to turn to. As one might say to himself at an earlier time in life, no matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I can shake this off with a little trip to Decatur. Then the dreadfulest smells filled up the rooms. So I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flames as I danced in the yard with waving arms while he wept like a freezing steer.
I lost my patronage in Spoon River from trying to put my mind in the camera to catch the soul of a person. The very best picture I ever took was of Judge Summers, attorney at law. He sat upright and had me pause till he got his cross eyes straight. Then, when he was ready, he said, "All right." And I yelled, "Overruled!" And his eye turned up, and I caught him, just as he used to look when saying, "I accept."
I was a peasant girl from Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy and strong. And the first place I worked at was Thomas Green's. On a summer's day, when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and took me right in his arms and kissed me on my throat. I turning my head, and none of us seemed to know what happened. And I cried for what became of me. And I cried as my secret began to show. One day Mrs. Green said that she understood and would make no trouble for me, and being childless would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still. So she hid in the house and sent out rumors as if it were going to happen to her. And all went well. The child was born. They were so kind to me. Later, I married Gus Workman. And years passed. But at political rallies, when sitters-by thought that I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green, that was not it. No, I wanted to say. That's my son. That's my son.
After you have enriched your soul to the highest point with books, thought, suffering, the understanding of many personalities, the power to interpret glances, silences, the pauses and momentous transformations, the genius in divination and prophecy, so that you feel able at times to hold the world in the hollow of your hand. Then if by the crowding of so many powers into the compass of your soul takes fire, and in the conflagration of your soul, the evil of the world is lighted up and made clear, be thankful in that hour of vision that life does not fiddle.
Nothing in life is alien to you. I was a penniless girl from Summum who stepped from the morning train in Spoon River. All the houses stood before me with closed doors and drawn shades. I was barred out. I had no place or part in any of them. And I walked past the old McNeely mansion, a castle of stone mid walks and gardens, with workmen about the place on guard, and the county and state upholding it for its lordly owner, full of pride. I was so hungry I had a vision. I saw a giant pair of scissors dip from the sky like the beam of a dredge and cut the house in two like a curtain. But at the commercial, I saw a man who winked at me as I asked for work. It was Wash McNeely's son. He proved the link in the chain of title to half my ownership of the mansion through a breach of promise suit. The scissors. So you see, the house, from the day I was born, was only waiting for me.
We stand about this place, we, the memories, and shade our eyes because we dread to read. June 17th, 1884, aged 21 years and 3 days. And all things are changed. And we, the memories, stand here for ourselves alone, for no eye marks us, or we know why we are here. Your husband is dead, your sister lives far away, your father is bent with age. He has forgotten you. He scarcely leaves the house anymore. No one remembers your exquisite face, your lyric voice, how you sang, even on the morning you were stricken, with piercing sweetness, with thrilling sorrow, before the advent of the child, which died with you. It is all forgotten, save by us, the memories, who are forgotten by the world. All is changed, save the river and the hill. Even they are changed. Only the burning sun and the quiet stars are the same. And we the memories, stand here in awe, our eyes closed with the weariness of tears, an immeasurable weariness.
Your red blossoms amid green leaves are drooping, beautiful geranium. But you do not ask for water. You cannot speak. You do not need to speak. Everyone knows that you're dying of thirst. Yet they do not bring water. They pass on just saying, the geranium wants water. And I, who had the happiness to share, and longed to share your happiness, I who loved you, Spoon River, and craved your love, withered before your eyes, Spoon River. Thirsting voiceless from chasteless of soul, to ask you for your love. You who knew and saw me perish before you, like this geranium, which someone has planted over me and left to die.
Lucinda Matlock. I went to the dances at Chandlersville and played Snap Out at Winchester. One night, we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June, and then I met Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost. Ere I reached the age of 60, I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick, and for holiday, rambled over the fields where sang the larks, and by Spoon River, gathering many a shell and many a flower and medicinal weed, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough, that is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of anger and discontent, sadness and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
At first, you will know not what they mean, and you may never know, and we may never tell you. These sudden flashes in your soul, like lambent lighting on snowy clouds at midnight when the moon is full. They come in solitude, or perhaps when you sit with your friend, and all at once, a silence falls on speech, and his eyes, without a flicker, glow at you. You two have seen secrets together. He sees it in you, and you in him. And there you sit, thrilling, lest the mysteries stand before you, and strike you dead. The splendor like the sun. Be brave, all souls who have such visions. Your body's alive. His mind is dead. You are catching a little whiff of the ether, reserved for God himself.
I was Willie Metcalf. They used to call me Dr. Myers because they said I looked like him. He was my father, according to Jack McGuire. I lived in the livery stalls, sleeping on the floor next to Roger Borman's bulldog, or sometimes in a stall. I could crawl through the legs of the wildest horses and avoid getting kicked. We knew each other. On spring days, I tramped across the country to get the feeling, which I sometimes lost, that I was not a separate thing from the earth. I used to lose myself, eyes half open, lying in the woods. I could talk to animals, even toads and snakes, anything with an eye to look into. One time, I saw a stone in the sunshine trying to turn into jelly. In April days in this cemetery, the dead gathered around me like a silent congregation in prayer. I never knew if I was a part of the earth with flowers growing in me, or if I walked. Now I know.
Of John Cabinus's wrath, and of the strife of hostile parties, and his dire defeat who led the common people in the cause of freedom for Spoon River, and the fall of Rhodes Bank that brought unnumbered woes and loss to many, with engendered hate that flamed into the torch in anarch hands to burn the courthouse, on whose blackened wreck a fairer temple rose, and progress stood. Sing, Muse, that lit the Chian's face with smiles, who saw the ant-like Greeks and Trojans crawl about Scamanders over walls, pursued or else pursuing, and the funeral pyres and sacred hecatombs, and first because of Helen, who with Paris fled to Troy as soulmate, and the wrath of Peleus' son, decreed to lose Chrysa's lovely spoil of war and dearest concubine. Say first, thou son of night, called Momus, from whose eyes no secret hides, and Thalia, smiling one, What bred twixt Thomas Rhodes and John Cabinus's the deadly strife? His daughter, Flossie. She, returning from her wandering with a troop of strolling players, walked the village streets, and her bracelets tinkling, and with sparkling rings, and words of serpent wisdom, and smile of cunning in her eyes. Then Thomas Rhodes, who ruled the church, and ruled the bank as well, made known his disapproval of the maid, and all of Spoon River whispered, and the eyes of all the church frowned on her, till she knew they feared her, and condemned. But them to flout she gave a dance to viols and to flutes brought from Peoria, and many youths, but lately made regenerate through the prayers of zealous preachers and of earnest souls, danced merrily, and sought her in the dance, who wore a dress so low of neck that eyes down-straying might survey the snowy swale till it was lost in whiteness. With the dance, the village changed to merriment from gloom. The milliner, Mrs. Williams, could not fill her orders for new hats, and every seamstress plied busy needles making gowns. Old trunks and chests were opened, for their store of laces and rings and trinkets were brought out of hiding, and all the youths fastidious grew of dress. Notes passed, and many a fair one's door at eve knew a bouquet, and strolling lovers thronged about the hills that overlooked the river. Then, since the mercy seats more empty showed, one of God's chosen lifted up his voice. "The woman of Babylon is among us. Rise, ye sons of light, and drive the wanton forth." So John Cabinus left the church, and left the hosts of law and order with his eyes by anger cleared, and him the liberal cause acclaimed as nominee to the mayoralty to vanquish A.D. Blood. But as the war waged bitterly for votes, and rumors flew about the bank, and of heavy loans which Rhodes's son had made to prop his loss in wheat, and many drew their coin and left the Bank of Rhodes more hollow, with the talk among the liberals of another bank, soon to be chartered, lo, the bubble burst amid cries and curses, but the liberals laughed, and in the hall of Nicholas Bindle held wise converse and inspiriting debate. High on a stage that overlooked the chairs where dozens sat, and where a pop-eyed daub of Shakespeare, very like the hired man of Christian Dalman, brow and pointed beard, upon a drab proscenium outward stared, sat Harmon Whitney, to that eminence by merit raised in ribaldry and guile, and to the assembled rebels thus he spake. "Whether to lie supine and let a clique cold-blooded, scheming, hungry, singing psalms devour our substance, wreck our banks, and drain our little hoards for hazards on the price of wheat or pork, or yet to cower beneath the shadow of aspired, unpeered to curb a breed of lackeys, and to serve the bank coadjutor and greed, and that is the question. Shall we have music and jocund dance, or tolling bells? Or shall young romance roam these hills about the river, flowering now to April's tears? Or shall they sit at home, or play croquet, where Thomas Rhodes may see? I ask you, if the blood of youth runs o'er, and riots 'gainst the regimen of gloom, shall we submit to have these youths and maids branded as libertines and wantons?" Ere his words were done, a woman's voice called, "No!" Then rose a sound of moving chairs, as when the numerous swine o'er the replenished troughs, and every head was turned, as when a flock of geese, back-turning to the hunter's tread, rise up the flapping wings. Then rang the hall with riotous laughter, for with battered hat tilted upon her saucy head, and fist raised in defiance, Daisy Fraser stood. Headlong she had been hurled from out the hall, save Wendell Bloyd, who spoke for women's rights prevented, in the bellowing voice of Burchard. Then mid applause she hastened toward the stage, and flung both gold and silver to the cause, and swiftly left the hall. Meantime, up stood a giant figure, a bearded like the son of Alcmene, deep-chested, round of paunch, and spoke in thunder. "Oh, there behold a man who for the truth withstood his wife. Such is our spirit. when that A.D. Blood compelled me to remove Dom Pedro. Quick, before Jim Brown could finish, Jefferson Howard obtained the floor and spake, I'll suits the time for clownish words, and trivial is our cause, if naught's at stake but John Cabinet's wrath, who was erstwhile of the other side and came to us for vengeance. More's at stake than triumph over New England or Virginia, and whether rum be sold or for 2 years, as in past 2 years this town be dry, matters but little. Oh, yes, revenue for sidewalks, sewers, but that is well enough. I wish to God this fight were now inspired by other passion than to solve the pride of John Cabinet or his daughter. Why can never contests of great moment spring forth from worthy things, and not little? Still, if men must always act so, and if rum must be the symbol and the medium to release from life's denial and from slavery, then give me rum! Exultant cries arose. Then as George Trimble had overcome his fear and vacillation begun to speak, the door creaked, and the idiot, William Metcalf, breathless and hatless, whiter than a sheet, entered and cried, The marshal's on his way to arrest you all, and if you only knew who's coming here tomorrow, I was listening beneath the window where the other side are making plans. So to a smaller room, to hear the idiot's secret, some withdrew, selected by the chair himself, and Jefferson Howard, Benjamin Pantia, and Wendell Bloyd, George Trimble, Adam Werich, Emmanuel Anderhart, Seth Compton, Godwin James, and Enoch Dunlap, Hiram Skates, Royal Butler, Carl Hamblin, Roger Heston, Ernest Hyde, and Pinwit the artist, Kinsey Keene, and E.C. Culbertson, and Franklin Jones, Benjamin Fraser, son of Benjamin Pantia, by Daisy Fraser, some of lesser note, and secretly conferred. But in the hall disorder reigned, and when the marshal came and found it so, he marched the hoodlums out and locked them up. Meanwhile, within a room back in the basement of the church, with blood counseled the wisest heads, Judge Somers first, deep learned in life, and next him Eliot Hawkins, and Lambert Hutchins, next him Thomas Rhodes, and Editor Whedon, next him Garrison Standard, a traitor to the Liberals, who with lip uncurled in scorn and with a bitter sneer, such strife about an insult to a woman, a girl of 18. Christian Dahlman, too, and others unrecorded. Some there were who frowned not on the cup, but loathed the rule democracy achieved thereby, the freedom and lust of life it symbolized. Now mourn with snowy fingers up the sky, flung like an orange at a festival, the ruddy sun, when from their hasty beds poured forth the hostile forces, and the streets resounded to the rattle of the wheels that drove this way and that to gather in tardy voters, and cries of chieftains who manned the battle. But at 10 o'clock, the Liberals bellowed fraud, and at the polls the rival candidates growled and came to blows. Then proved the idiot's tale of yestereve a word of warning. Suddenly on the streets walked hog-eyed Allen, terror of the hills, that looked on Bernadon 10 miles removed. No man of this degenerate day could lift the boulder which he threw. And when he spoke, the windows rattled, and beneath his brows thatched like a shed with bristling hair of black, his small eyes glistened like a maddened boar. And as he walked, the boards creaked, and he walked, a song of menace rumbled. Thus he came, the champion of A.D. Blood, commissioned to terrify the Liberals. Many fled, and when Hawk Sars awe the chicken's yard, he passed the polls, and with a playful hand touched Brown, the giant, and he fell against, as though he were a child, the wall, so strong was hog-eyed Allen. But the Liberals smiled, for soon as hog-eyed Allen reached the walk, close on his steps paced Bengal Mike, brought in by Kinsey Keene, the subtle-witted one, to match the hog-eyed Allen. He was scarce 3/4 the other's bulk, but steel his arms, and with a tiger's heart. Too many killed, and many wounded in days before, and no one feared. But when the hog-eyed one saw Bengal Mike, his countenance grew dark. The bristles o'er his red eyes twitched with rage, the song he rumbled lowered. Round and round the courthouse paced he, followed stealthily by Bengal Mike, who jeered him every step. "Come, elephant, and fight! Come, ya hog-eyed coward! Come face about and fight me, lumbering sneak! Come, beefy bully, hit me, if you can! Take out your gun, you duffer! Give me reason to draw and kill you! Take your billy out, I'll crack your boy's head with a piece of brick!" But never a word the hog-eyed one returned, but trod about the courthouse, followed both by troops of boys and watched by all the men. All day they walked the square, but when Apollo stood with reluctant look above the hills, as fain to see the end, and all the votes were cast and closed the polls before the door of Trainor's drugstore, Bengal Mike, in tones that echoed through the village, bawled the taunt. "Who was your mother, hog-eyed?" In a trice, as when a wild boar turns upon the hound that through the breaks of an August day has gashed him with its teeth, the hog-eyed one rushed with his giant arms on Bengal Mike and grabbed him by the throat. Then rose to heaven the frightened cries of boys and yells of men forth rushing to the street, and Bengal Mike moved this way and now that, drew in his head as if his neck to shorten, and bent down to break the death grip of the hog-eyed one. Twixt guttural wrath and fast expiring strength, striking his fist against the invulnerable chest of hog-eyed Allen. Then, when some came in to part them, others stayed them, and the fight spread amongst dozens. Many valiant souls went down from clubs and bricks. But tell me, Muse, what god or goddess rescued Bengal Mike? With one last mighty struggle did he grasp the murderous hands and turn kick his foe. Then, as if struck by lightning, vanished all the strength from hog-eyed Allen. At his side sank limp those great giant arms, and o'er his face dread pallor and sweat of anguish spread, and those great knees, invincible but late, shook to his weight. And quickly, as the lion leaps on his wounded prey, did Bengal Mike smite with a rock the temple of his foe. And down he sank, and darkness o'er his eyes passed like a cloud. As when the woodman fells some giant oak upon a summer's day, and all the songsters of the forest shrill, and one great hawk that has his nestling young amid the topmost branches croaks, has crashed the leafy branches through the tangled boughs of brother oaks, so fell the hog-eyed one amid the lamentations of the friends of A.D. Blood. Well, just then, 4 lusty men bore the town marshal, on whose iron face the purple pall of death already lay, to Trainor's drugstore, shot by Jack McGuire, and cries went up of, "Lynch him!" And the sound of running feet from every side was heard, bent on the... The late Mr. Jonathan Swift Somers, laureate of Spoon River, planned the Spoonyard as an epic in 24 books, but unfortunately did not live to complete even the first book. The fragment was found among his papers by William Marion Reedy, and was for the first time published in Reedy's Mirror of December 18th, 1914.